Welcome to another episode of The Why Factor. Today is April the 14th. A busy time for university students midway through our exam and assessment period, and we are really feeling the heat. But last week
we actually covered time management tips and how not to procrastinate, just to help you guys procrastinate a little further. No, but really, if anyone had any further questions for the life coach we had on the show last week, Brother Yahya, feel free to send them through to us on our Facebook page or email, and we'll be very happy to pass it on to him and come back to you with the answers.
Most definitely. Today we've got an exciting episode planned for you guys. We're going to be covering a lot of the news items, which include, it's all over the news as well, the recent burqa ban in France, which is now enforceable. I'm also going to be covering some local political issues, such as Pauline Hanson.
She's definitely an issue.
Well, that worked then? Play on words.
Mm-hmm. And we'll also have a special segment on a niche sport amongst female Muslims in our community.
It's growing though. It's actually growing.
Yeah.
Australian Football League. So look forward to it.
So stay tuned and don't miss any of that. Just a quick reminder that our Facebook page is the Y Factor Radio Show and our email is yfactor@live.com.au.
The Y Factor.
Okay, one of our first news items for today is the France face veil ban, or the niqab ban. It's actually come into act and it's enforceable at the moment. Under French law, which is promoted by Nicolas Sarkozy, any Muslim woman wearing a face veil is now banned from all public places in France, including when walking down the street, taking a train, going to hospital, or collecting her children from school. Women in niqabs will effectively, and you can pretty much conclude it as they're pretty much under house arrest. And they're only allowed to be in a place of worship or a private car where they're able to wear their niqab. Otherwise, they risk being stopped by traffic police.
And France is actually the first country in Europe to apply this ban. 2 niqabis were arrested on the same day it came into force, so on Monday, for protesting the ban, and one 28-year-old niqabi was actually fined €150, which is about 207 Australian dollars, for doing nothing but pretty much wearing that in a shopping centre in Paris.
Very interesting. Another sister by the name of Kenza Dryder, she stood defiantly outside Notre Dame, and it was a peaceful protest where she quoted, "I'm not here to provoke but to defend my civil liberties as a French citizen." She's a 32-year-old mother of 4, and she actually had the niqab, the full face veil, and then she revealed her eyes because the traffic police were walking past, and she still also got fined, which is very sad.
Well, they didn't just ban covering your eyes, they banned the whole face covering, so, I mean, that makes sense. But I think what I find very interesting is that the total number of niqabis in France is only about 2,000, and there's about 4 to 6 million Muslim women in France. So 2,000 women wearing niqabs is really relatively nothing.
They're a minority in the country. And
exactly.
Going off what Parliament's comments were in recent times, they said it was an attack on French values. And like you said, if you consider the French population in proportion to the French population wearing a niqab, there's a drastic, difference exactly between the two of them. So in a sense, they are promoting secularism, but I think there is a hidden agenda behind this.
I don't think so, though, because if you really are promoting secularism, that just means I don't walk around preaching to other people that they should follow my religion and that the law itself should not reflect bias towards a certain religion, right? So, like, if the law had something in it that said, you have to celebrate Christmas, then that's definitely not secular because you're telling people to take on a Christian value, right? But by banning someone from doing something within their religion that's not even compulsory in their religion, I don't really think that's embodying secularism. I think that's a very clear bid by Sarkozy to try and win votes from the anti-immigration voters because they have some sort of a massive fear of Islam that is embodied in the scare factor presented by media portrayal of niqabis.
Well said. And I think it's actually hypocritical of the French government who are trying to become a modern democracy, if you like. In principle, a democracy means freedom of expression and freedom of religious expression. So for them to claim that, okay, if they claim that the niqab or the hijab, for instance, oppresses women, it's a oppressive statement on their husbands onto them, and then they're using democracy to justify banning it, in principally they're going against their own principles. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of contradiction happening here. But I mean, the biggest contradiction of all is saying that this is France helping these women become liberated. And how are you liberating someone by taking away a civil liberty, which is their freedom to choose what they want to wear?
It's very interesting. I mean, France has a strict separation of church and state, and they actually ban headscarves and all religious symbols in schools in 2004. So there's an obvious push for them becoming a modern secular democracy. But it'd be interesting to know what our Muslim sisters and our brothers here in Australia would think if that law came into act over here in Australia.
Well, we put it to our listeners on the Facebook page, and one listener said that she wouldn't leave her house unless there was a sincere need, and that her deen would come first and she wouldn't let any man-made law override that. Another listener says, what next? To make people stop practicing their beliefs. I think that's their ultimate goal, but they have no idea how motivated we are and how empowered we get when they throw something like this our way. It only makes us stronger. I think that's a fair point as well, that the more someone tries to prevent you from doing something, the more determined you are to do it, I guess.
Most definitely. They have resilience, inshallah.
And another comment says, this truly saddens me. Sadly, this is another unfortunate case of Islamophobia. If only someone could help the people opposing this, especially the government speaker on this recording who clearly has no idea. That's a comment on the actual news piece that we posted up there.
It's a pertinent comment. I mean, ignorance is very much rife, not only in our community, but in communities all over the world. So for them, they should do their research into this. But like we said, there are powers beyond our control who are in charge of this law.
She mentioned that the niqab, by wearing it, can increase taqwa or fear of Allah. And also when a person sees her own reflection and her hijab, she becomes aware of it when she wears it. She may be reminded that she dresses like this because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered it, and because she knows that Allah is aware of what she does. These thoughts may inspire her to behave in the best possible manner. So just think how much more of a reminder niqab is. That's also a very worthy comment there to think about. So thank you very much for those comments.
And keep them coming as well. Jump on our page and let us know what you think. If the ban were to come to Australia, what would your reaction be? What would be your initial response? How would you go about living your life? If you know someone who is affected by this ban, let us know on the Facebook page.
I think last week we mentioned as well that one French woman had actually come up in a video on YouTube and said that when the ban does come into place, she would just wear a medical mask under her niqab, and if someone asked her to remove her niqab, she'd remove it, but the mask is still there and her face is covered, and you can't really ask someone to take off their medical mask because what if they have something contagious?
Good way to get around the law.
The Y Factor.
Since we're on the topic of Islamophobia, One Nation founder Pauline Hanson has failed in her bid to win a seat in the New South Wales Upper House, which is good news. She narrowly missed due to preferences that went against her, and positions went to Mr. Buckingham and Miss Johnston of the Green Party.
You gotta give it to Pauline Hanson. No matter how many times she loses, no matter how much she is criticised, that woman just never gives up. She lost, and yet now she's talking about starting a new party.
And her reaction to her loss was a typical Pauline Hanson reaction. She said, and I quote, "You need me around to keep the bastards honest."
Wow.
Very straightforward and very
classy.
blunt. Indeed.
I'm just surprised, and I think many people have expressed this very same sentiment as to why Pauline Hanson actually came back to Australia. We all thought she'd moved to England, and in England they removed the concept of multiculturalism. They actually scrapped the multiculturalism from the law. So, I mean, you'd think that's the perfect place for Pauline Hanson to be. So why is she back here and trying to force her, racist views on us again?
Maybe we as Muslims should take a proactive step and channel her energy and determination in our direction to suit our purposes and our evil agendas.
Yes, building mosques and teaching our children about Islam is very evil, Mohamed.
Of course it is. Look, Miran, I have a solution for this. Pauline Hanson needs to come to next year's Lakemba Mosque Open Day. There she can have a falafel, some hummus and tabbouleh. And mind you, after that meal, I guarantee you she'll not speak ill of Islam or Muslims ever again. Problem solved. Game, set, match. Checkmate.
The Y Factor.
Sticking with our Australian politics theme, we're looking at New South Wales Parliament, where the Shooters and the Fishers Party has actually got a balance of power with the Christian Democratic Party, which means that the governing party, the Liberals, have to actually take into account the things they say. Now, this is interesting because one thing that they want is to allow target practice at school with children as young as 10 shooting guns.
Wow, they'll definitely win the Muslim vote.
I think they already have, Mohamed. I think many people actually rocked up, saw Shooters and Fishers on the ballot paper and just went tick. That and the parking meters party, I thought that was pretty cool. No parking meters.
Most definitely. One of their core objectives is they want to access at least 29 of the national parks around New South Wales for shooting of feral animals and deer.
Yeah.
And we all know
so
most
cruel.
Muslims enjoy hunting, of
Really?
course. Indeed.
That's a massive
most of the men do, though.
generalisation.
It's not a wild generalisation. I think it's a common theme expressed on the Y Factor page. You can check it out.
Really? Okay, I'm going to go check our page. And if there's nothing on there saying
Okay,
that
to all the
people
boys out there, please express your love of hunting on the Y Factor page.
I don't really think that's something to be proud of, though. Like, why would you go and harm innocent animals just for fun?
Look, within Islamic parameters, not for fun, we obviously eat our deer and our quail and our cows and our cattle
After you
and
shoot
our
them?
sheep. Yeah, and then you slaughter
Aren't you
them.
supposed to slaughter them?
You slaughter them and you shoot them, then you slaughter them.
Really? Okay, cool. I'm not going to get into that, but to me, I mean,
With all due respect
what do you
to
think, Mohammed, about
animals
teaching
out there.
children how to shoot from the age of 10?
That's a really, really good initiative. I think we
think
all
so?
should be, we should be skilled when it comes to weapon handling.
We're talking about guns here. 10-year-old holding a gun, learning how to shoot it.
He might get the call for war, so he must be prepared. I probably should have made that comment on air, so please to anyone, do not take offence to anything at all that I've said. It's merely adding some humour or stirring the pot, if you like.
You're playing devil's advocate, but
Pretty
I
much.
just want to mention, we have bullying is one major issue that is always in the media because obviously it's something that people face at school a lot. And if bullying is a problem, imagine if kids at school were learning how to shoot guns. It wouldn't just be, beating someone up or, insulting them. You'd pretty much be pulling out your gun and being like, give me your lunch money.
And they won't be fake guns as well, since they're going to...
Exactly.
It's very interesting what they're trying to push forward, but...
Yeah, I mean, what they're saying in support of their argument is that when you introduce someone to firearms at an early age, they become used to them so they don't grow up being like trigger crazy like in the US, basically. But that's my exact point. In the US, you have the right to bear arms, so people grow up having guns in their house.
And the homicide rates in comparison to Australia are massive. So I think that speaks for itself. It's an interesting ambition they do have. But they do, as Miran said, they hold the balance of power with the Christian Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So at the moment, they're a minority.
But still one to take into account.
The Y Factor.
Onto our weird and wacky news. A few weeks ago, the world's biggest inventions fair was held in a country that I've never heard of called Devusa.
Where's
Is that
that?
even a country, Miran? Or a city? Regardless, 45 people from 45 different countries showed off their weird and wacky designs in Geneva.
That's a city we know. Finally, something we understand.
In the hope of attracting investors or buyers. And someone came up from Iran, this guy called Payman, came up with the super smart boot, which he hopes will become a Swiss Army knife of footwear. It's actually got a knife in the shoe. So it's like a movie. You click the shoe and the knife
It's
clicks
like
out.
in Get Smart, where he uses the shoe as a phone and everything else.
So all you boys out there thinking of crime avenues, here's another one for you.
Why don't you just say self-defense avenues?
Yes,
Always
self-defense.
aggressive.
The Y Factor.
And that wacky story brings us to the end of the news segment. I'll be leaving Mohamed here to take on the rest of the episode with our guest host, who will be coming on after the break.
And we'll be covering the Muslim women and AFL story, so stay tuned after the break. You're listening to The Y Factor.